Nearly 3 million people climb aboard a plane in the United States every single day. That is close to the entire population of Chicago boarding a flight before sunset. Every one of those flights depends on two separate safety systems working at once. Neither system was ever supposed to rely on the other to function. So what actually keeps two aircraft from colliding in the sky above you right now? And why did that layered system still fail once catastrophically in January of 2025? The first layer sits entirely on the ground. Air traffic controllers use radar to keep aircraft spaced apart by strict fixed distances. In busy terminal airspace, that means 3 nautical miles apart sideways. Out over open country, controllers widen that gap to 5 nautical miles. Vertically, aircraft below 29,000 feet must stay a full 1,000 feet apart. Over the ocean, radar coverage often disappears entirely. Controllers there fall back on timed position reports radioed in directly by the pilots themselves. That older method still works, but it leaves far more room for error than a live radar picture does. The second layer sits inside the cockpit of nearly every commercial aircraft. It is called TCAS, and it works completely independently of any ground controller. Aircraft transponders quietly interrogate each other automatically without either pilot doing anything at all. If two planes drift too close, the system issues a traffic advisory first, a simple heads up. If the danger keeps building, it issues something sharper, a resolution advisory. That advisory tells a pilot exactly whether to climb or descend. Immediately, the most advanced versions can even talk to each other directly. Two aircraft heading toward each other automatically agree on opposite moves. One climbs while the other descends, seconds before a human ever finishes reading the alert. TCAS can spot another aircraft from roughly 40 miles away. It tracks that aircraft continuously once it closes to around 12 miles. Ground level poses its own separate danger too. The FAA logged more than 1,700 runway incursions across the country in 2024 alone. Those are close calls between aircraft or vehicles crossing paths on the ground. This entire layered system exists because of two specific disasters decades apart. In 1956, a United Airlines plane and a TWA plane collided directly over the Grand Canyon. Everyone aboard both aircraft was killed. At the time, pilots relied almost entirely on their own eyes to spot other traffic, a method aviation still calls see and avoid. That crash pushed engineers to start researching automated collision avoidance for the very first time. Progress stalled for decades because early systems could never get two aircraft to agree on which direction to move. If both pilots turned the same way at the same moment, the warning system could actually make a near miss worse instead of better. Engineers eventually solved that problem by having the two systems coordinate directly so both aircraft always receive opposite. Complementary instructions. Then, in 1986, a small private plane strayed into controlled airspace over Cerritos, California. It struck an Aramco jet on final approach without a working altitude reporting transponder on board. The controller working that shift had no way of seeing the smaller aircraft's altitude on radar at all. 67 people died aboard both aircraft, along with 15 more people on the ground where the wreckage came down. Congress finally mandated TCAS on every large commercial jet within a few years of that crash. Since TCAS became mandatory, there has not been another fatal mid-air collision between two large airliners anywhere in U.S. airspace. That single fact represents nearly 4 decades of a specific danger essentially disappearing from American skies. Here's the part nobody tells you about the one category this layered system was never built to catch as reliably. The official confidence around TCAs and 8C has always centered on one specific danger: one airliner colliding with another airliner. On January 29, 2025, a passenger jet collided with a military helicopter near Reagan National Airport. 67 people were killed. Federal investigators later revealed the FAA already held internal reports on this exact danger. More than 80 serious close calls between helicopters and passenger planes had occurred near that same airport. Since 2021 alone, over 15,000 recorded air separation incidents had occurred in that same airspace, including 85 genuine near collisions. Local air traffic controllers had repeatedly raised concerns about that exact helicopter route long before the crash ever happened. Those concerns were logged and passed up through the system according to investigators. But no permanent fix followed. At certain points along that route, helicopters and landing aircraft could be separated by as little as 75 feet vertically. Investigators later called that gap an intolerable risk, one that had existed for years before the collision finally happened. Not a mechanical failure, not a flaw in TCAS itself, not something either safety layer was ever specifically designed to catch in mixed civilian and military airspace. Investigators also later confirmed a critical staffing detail from that exact shift. Only one controller was managing both helicopter and airplane traffic from that tower at the moment of the collision. That role is normally split between two separate people. The official language describes American airspace as protected by a system that essentially eliminated airliner collisions decades ago. The fuller reality is that the system was built, tested, and proven against one specific kind of danger. A different, quieter kind of gap sat largely unaddressed the entire time. Nationwide, the FAA employed roughly 4% fewer certified controllers in 2024 than it did back in 2013. Over that same stretch, annual flights actually rose by more than 6%. As of September 2024, over 40% of the FAA's terminal facilities were staffed below the agency's own target level. The strangest irony inside this entire staffing picture involves deliberate overstaffing. Some facilities intentionally train and station more controllers than they currently need. That surplus exists purely to buffer against retirements and departures still years away. Meanwhile, other towers across the country remain critically short of controllers right now, today, during every single shift. Controllers at some of those short-staffed facilities have reported working 6-day weeks and mandatory overtime for years running. Fatigue from that kind of schedule is a documented risk in work this cognitively demanding. The gap sitting between a fully staffed tower and a critically short one is not a mechanical flaw at all. It is a staffing decision made and remade every single week across hundreds of facilities nationwide. So the picture of what actually keeps planes apart is really a story of two different kinds of safety working side by side. TCAS and ground radar together did something remarkable, essentially erasing airliner-on-airliner collisions from American skies for more than 3 decades running. Neither layer, however, was ever specifically engineered around a helicopter route running feet away from a runway approach path. Neither layer accounts for a control tower running on half its intended staff during a single ordinary evening shift. The system did not fail from a single broken part. It failed at the edge of what it was ever actually designed to cover in the first place. Federal investigators have since issued dozens of new safety recommendations aimed directly at closing that exact edge. Whether every one of them gets fully implemented remains an open question the aviation world is still watching closely. A layered safety system this rigorous can still miss a gap sitting in plain sight for years. That makes you wonder whether the open ocean has anything close to this level of protection. Billion-dollar cargo ships still rely on far less to avoid colliding into each other in open water. This kind of hidden system is the sort of thing you can keep seeing unpacked stage by stage. Subscribing keeps the next one coming.